Part 38. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 372. Wife, get ready to go in. As the door slowly opened, Nai Chen looked at Chu Qingyu and smiled. Yeah. Chu Qingyu nodded, but a trace of doubt emerged in her heart. Although she came to the haunted house amidst the sweet talk of Yukin and Nai Chen, she felt something was wrong very early. Why did Yukin say that this kind of place is suitable for young couples to date, and why did Nai Chen have a subtle smile on his lips? Could it be? After falling into deep thought for a long time, Chu Qingyu seemed to have a flash of inspiration and suddenly figured out the cause and effect. If I remember correctly, many young couples are looking for excitement and like to go to some dangerous places. Especially some men who want to take advantage of their girlfriends like to take their girlfriends to see some scary things. For example, fighting with powerful monsters, or listening to storytellers telling sensational and scary stories. In this way, the girlfriend may take the initiative to throw herself into their arms because of fear, and tremble in their arms. These routines were all investigated on the spot and recorded in the cases when Chu Qingyu wrote the theory of uselessness. If this is the case, the things that scare people in the haunted house are scary things. And if a girl is scared, she may show her weak and pitiful side because of fear. In other words, haha, so that's how it is. Chu Qingyu's eyes changed slightly, and a confident smile appeared on the corner of her mouth inadvertently. No wonder Sister Ming said it was a gift, and no wonder Nai Chen agreed without hesitation. It turned out that there was such a reason. I have to admit that this method is indeed very effective in promoting love between couples. But unfortunately, it is only for ordinary couples. As a female emperor, it is naturally impossible for her to be scared by ghosts. So this method is also doomed to fail. Hee, the idea is not bad, but it's a pity that you met this emperor. Chu Qingyu's cold face couldn't help but show a slightly smug smile. As Nai Chen walked into the haunted house, she was obviously not afraid. The dark room was empty, with only a road leading to the depths. As the two walked in, every footstep could be heard. The atmosphere was silent, and the environment without any sound seemed even more gloomy and terrifying. No matter what was inside, it was obvious that the horror effect of just entering was fully achieved. If it were other girls, even female disciples who cultivated their character and had extremely strong psychological qualities, they would probably find it difficult to keep their hearts calm at this moment. Even if they were not scared to tears on the spot, their hearts would definitely be frightened and uneasy, and even their whole body would be a little cold. But Chu Qingyu was obviously different. Not only did her clear eyes not reveal any fear, but they exuded bursts of coldness. The dark environment not only failed to frighten her, but even aroused her fighting spirit. Every time she took the next step, Chu Qingyu's footsteps were very firm, and she exuded awe-inspiring majesty. Waves of oppression as cold as the coldest days of winter drifted around, and the majestic imperial power was so powerful that ghosts and humans would be in awe of it. Even though the scene in the haunted house was dark and terrifying at the moment, Chu Qingyu could not feel the slightest fear. With firm steps, the power of the emperor seemed even more oppressive. After all, even when facing the siege of countless emperors, Chu Qingyu never showed any panic or fear. As the ruler of Tianyun Palace, the empress who was admired and feared by countless cultivators in the world and dared not invade in the slightest, how could she be frightened by such a trivial scene? Not to mention these ghosts hiding in the depths, even facing thousands of undead armies, it was impossible for her heart to be shaken in the slightest. Step by step, Chu Qingyu walked forward firmly, with a cold look in her eyes, and a bit of arrogance. At this moment, a shadow suddenly flashed at the corner. This huge ghost shadow was the ghost that Yukin had buried here long ago. The body of the ghost was originally spiritual, cold, and icy. At this moment, he put on a coat that could make the spiritual body look several times larger, and cast a huge shadow under the reflection of a faint light outside the door, which was even more terrifying. In addition, he suddenly appeared without any signs. If other women saw this scene, they would probably have been scared and screamed. But looking at the ghost in front of her, Chu Qingyu's eyes were calm, as if she had already expected this moment. There was no fear, not even the slightest emotional fluctuation. The cold and arrogant power of the emperor emanated. With a flash of cold light in her eyes, Chu Qingyu seemed to wave her palm lightly. But it looked like a light palm strike, but when it reached the ghost's body, it was like a powerful force. Bang! I never thought that this palm could contain such a terrifying force. The ghost's body flew out and hit the wall heavily. Even though the wall was extremely solid, it still cracked under this huge force. Chu Qingyu had restrained a lot of power in this palm strike. Otherwise, the ghost might have been killed on the spot. Looking at the broken wall and the ghost that fell to the ground, Nai Chen couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. As expected, it was almost the same as imagined. These things could not cause the Empress to be afraid at all. Not to mention scaring her, this ghost barely saved its life, and the whole haunted house was not directly overturned by a palm, which was already considered to be Chu Qingyu's mercy. He, what do you think? My heart is not as fragile as you think. A touch of coldness drifted around, and Chu Qingyu couldn't help but reveal a slightly smug smile. The scene just now was enough to prove how firm her Tao heart was. Even if more ghosts appeared next, it would be useless. Although Nai Chen and Sister Ming had joined forces, it was obvious that this small haunted house had no way to deal with him. After all, the gap in strength was too great. Wife, you are really amazing. Nai Chen couldn't help but give a thumbs up. Hearing this sincere praise, Chu Qingyu tried her best to raise her head in a cold and arrogant manner, but she still couldn't help feeling a little happy in her heart. In front of Nai Chen, she finally regained her dignity as the Empress. However, she didn't notice that Nai Chen smiled slightly, and his eyes were already looking at the snow lotus on her head. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 373. Princess, if this continues, we will be wiped out. In the depths of the haunted house, several ghosts came to Yu Jian in fear and trepidation. It was obvious that they were frightened. They would have obeyed the princess' orders unconditionally. But this time, the situation was quite different. Although most ghosts would not be afraid of ghosts, during the time when the haunted house was open, the terrifying atmosphere and sudden situations here could still scare many ghosts with the wonderful props brought by the princess. But now, halfway through the conversation, several ghosts felt a chill all over their bodies. Because the woman who entered the haunted house had a terrifyingly stable heart. There were all kinds of ways to scare people in the haunted house. Some wore white clothes, some had scarlet tongue props hanging straight down to the ground, and some had long hair that seemed to cover their entire bodies. Not only that, on the road along the way, some ghosts hid in the corners, some suddenly broke out of the wall, and some suddenly fell from the ceiling. These terrifying scenes should be enough to scare anyone. However, the cold woman seemed to be unaffected. Not to mention being frightened, even her eyes did not change. What was even more terrifying was that she was indeed a powerful emperor. She could slap any ghosts that suddenly appeared hundreds of meters away with just one palm. If she hadn't seemed to hold back a little, she would have been able to slap them to death. So seeing that the two had walked through almost half of the maze, the plan to scare them was not successful at all. The ghosts buried halfway suffered heavy losses, and were even beaten to the point of doubting their existence. If this continued, it would only be a matter of time before they could defeat all the ghosts without any effort. Don't worry, let the ghosts along the way do their jobs and do their things well. When the time comes, the situation will change. However, completely beyond the ghosts' expectations, Yu Jian was calm and composed, and her tone and expression seemed to be confident. "Princess, do you have a way to deal with her?" The ghost was slightly stunned, and it was obvious that he was a little bit unbelieving. But Yu Qian's attitude made him believe it. "I understand, Princess." Without waiting for a response, the ghost had to bite the bullet and agreed after gritting his teeth. After respectfully bowing to Yu Qian, he quickly disappeared into the darkness and passed the news to other ghosts buried along the way. At this moment, Chu Qingyu was also slowly walking towards the depths of the haunted house step by step. Even before using her spiritual power, a burst of cold air floated around her body invisibly. The autumn eyes with a bit of pride seemed to be able to take everything in. Even though the front was deep and boundless, it seemed that she couldn't stir up the slightest ripple in her heart. Along the way, the ambushing ghosts tried their best to intimidate her, but they were all easily slapped away by her palm. Not to mention being scared, she didn't feel anything at all. Nai Chen, although your plan is very good, and you even teamed up with Sister Ming, I am completely different from ordinary women." A trace of slight pride could not help but appear on that cold and arrogant face. After all, it was obvious that Nai Chen's plan had completely failed. After leaving the haunted house and exposing his plan, this time, it would be her victory. It had been a long time since she had been able to defeat Nai Chen in turn. For this victory, even though it seemed calm on the surface, Chu Qingyu was quite looking forward to it. She couldn't wait and wanted to leave the haunted house as quickly as possible. He, how about it, now you know how powerful this emperor is. Finally, Chu Qingyu couldn't help but turn around and look at Nai Chen, with a confident smile on her lips. "Yeah, my wife, you are really amazing." Faced with Chu Qingyu's playful boasting, Nai Chen just smiled faintly and gave a thumbs up. Chu Qingyu. Although she received Nai Chen's praise, she always felt inexplicably, why, Nai Chen's praise seemed very perfunctory. And, it seemed that he had other intentions. However, I have fully demonstrated my strength and character along the way, and Nai Chen should be able to retreat when faced with difficulties. She had a little doubt in her heart. Although it had been very smooth, she always felt something strange. At this moment, a ghost suddenly broke out of a box in the darkness in the distance. This ghost seemed to have been hiding here for a long time. I don't know what kind of transformation it has undergone. At this moment, it looks like a three-headed and six-armed man, covered with scarlet blood. Sun Yan's terrifying tongue was extremely long and even fell to the ground. Its voice was as hoarse and terrifying as the roar of a ghost baby, and it flew towards Chu Qingyu. Hiss. In the pitch-black environment, this extremely strange and terrifying figure was too sudden. However, Chu Qingyu's cold eyes seemed to have seen everything. The speed of the ghost's movement was obviously very fast, but in her eyes, it was as slow as a turtle. Before the ghost's pounce, Chu Qingyu's figure had already flashed ahead, as fast as the wind. "Lady, hold back." Bang. The ghost was obviously panicking when it flew halfway, but before it could even beg for mercy, Chu Qingyu slapped him and slapped him away. Accompanied by the cold wind, it was unknown how far the slap had blown him away. "Hey, you don't learn your lesson, and you dare to scare me." Chu Qingyu clapped her hands in joy, and it was obvious that she felt great after the slap. The journey of the haunted house was almost halfway through, and there was nothing threatening in the first half, and it must be the same below. But just when Chu Qingyu let down her guard, she suddenly felt a gust of wind sweeping from behind. In the darkness, Nai Chen had already locked onto the target and jumped up suddenly. In fact, as early as before entering the haunted house, when he looked at Yu Qian, he already knew that this smart and intelligent princess had almost the same idea as himself. A normal empress would not be afraid of ghosts, but as long as she became smaller, the situation would be completely different. So after entering the haunted house, Nai Chen had been looking for an opportunity to kill with one blow and grab the snow lotus. Chu Qingyu's attention had been very focused before, and she had no chance at all. But this moment of slackness became a perfect opportunity. "Wife, let me help you experience what a real haunted house is." Nai Chen's voice sounded. The next moment, his palm broke through the air and grabbed the snow lotus on Chu Qingyu's head. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 374. Although Chu Qingyu sensed something was wrong, she had never expected Nai Chen to be so fast. And it seemed that he had planned it long ago. Nai Chen's movements were extremely fierce, accurate, and steady, leaving her no room for reaction. Because she had let down her guard just now, Chu Qingyu had no chance to react at all. A palm broke through the air, and the snow lotus on her head was actually taken directly by Nai Chen and taken away in an instant. Oh no, my body. A burst of light appeared, and Chu Qingyu could no longer control her body from shrinking. After a while, when the light faded away, staring at her little hands and feet, Chu Qingyu found that her voice had become a little childish. I accidentally became smaller again. If I hadn't been a little inflated and let down my guard just now, with my strength, it would be impossible for Nai Chen to take away the snow lotus. She regretted it in her heart, but it was too late. After all, with Nai Chen's height, even if she jumped up, she couldn't get the snow lotus in his hand. Why did you take my snow lotus? Chu Qingyu could only stare at Nai Chen anxiously. For this question, Nai Chen had already prepared for it and smiled slightly. Wife, aren't you going to challenge the haunted house? I took the snow lotus to help you give up the blessing of spiritual power and better devote yourself to the challenge. See if you can overcome your fear, wife. Actually, is this the reason? Humph, I don't believe it. Chu Qingyu was still a little skeptical. After all, she had just fully demonstrated her courage as a female emperor. But the time when she was finally able to hold her head high was interrupted halfway. Although she felt a little resentful in her heart, Chu Qingyu was obviously interested when she heard the word challenge. For so many years as an emperor, she liked to face various challenges. No matter what form it was, she almost never refused any challenge. It seems that I have been embarrassed a lot when I became smaller in the underworld. In the eyes of Nai Chen and Sister Ming, it seems that as long as I become smaller, I will feel that I am easy to bully. Wait, so this is the reason? Suddenly, Chu Qingyu seemed to understand the reason why Nai Chen made me smaller. How could it be because he wanted to give me a full challenge? This guy clearly wanted to take advantage of the change in my personality after becoming smaller to bully me. Maybe, I think I will be like other little girls in love, crying and hiding in my boyfriend's arms. Haha, so this is what you planned. Chu Qingyu, who understood Nai Chen's idea at once, couldn't help but feel excited, and at the same time, she showed inexplicable confidence. But I was not scared at all just now, so I guess it would be the same even if I became smaller. Don't think that my courage will change after I become smaller. Nai Chen, you are going to lose this time. Seeing through Nai Chen's thoughts at a glance, and having just crossed half of the haunted house without any obstacles, Chu Qingyu was obviously very confident. In order to show her fearlessness, she took a step forward without hesitation. Although her voice was still a bit childish, Chu Qingyu raised her head proudly. Want to see my courage? Humph, I'll let you see it. With a confident hum, Chu Qingyu walked in front of Nai Chen without hesitation, and even her petite body was a bit swaggering, as if she wanted to show her fearlessness. Nai Chen smiled and walked behind, without responding, but a cunning look flashed in his eyes. Hiss, so strange. Nai Chen walked slower and slower, and Chu Qingyu walked faster and faster. Suddenly, she felt a chill on her back. The haunted house was still as dark as before, and the ghosts hidden in the depths were only used to scare people, and it was impossible for them to really take action. But for some reason, Chu Qingyu, who had become smaller, suddenly felt that her state of mind seemed to be somewhat different from before. Looking at the dark road ahead, it seemed as if she was about to be swallowed up at any time. Every footstep could be heard, and the silence in the silent environment was so cold that it made people feel cold. Strange, strange, why does it feel a little wrong? Chu Qingyu suddenly felt a little cold, and her petite body trembled a little. She could clearly feel that her heartbeat seemed to be many times faster than before, and her eyes could not help looking around, and she could not control the fear in her heart more and more. No, it must be just that the weather is a little cold today, and this emperor is definitely not afraid. Chu Qingyu tried her best to hint to herself, but she could not calm her emotions no matter what. She could only perceive that both her heartbeat and breathing were constantly accelerating. The darkness in front of her seemed like a monster that could jump out at any time to choose someone to eat. Swoosh! Suddenly, Chu Qingyu ran in the opposite direction and ran to Nai Chen's side. Moreover, her delicate arms tightly wrapped around Nai Chen's legs. Her expression of wanting to get up showed that she was obviously frightened. However, although Nai Chen originally thought that Chu Qingyu could hold on for a while, he did not expect that he could not hold back so soon. Feeling the cold and trembling little hand on his leg, Nai Chen couldn't help but laugh. "Wife, are you scared now? How is that possible?" Even though she was frightened and her heart was beating fast, Chu Qingyu, who didn't want to lose face, immediately retorted after hearing this. "I'm just a little cold, so I came over to keep warm." "That's right, that's it." In order to make Nai Chen believe it, Chu Qingyu suppressed the trembling in her heart and loosened Nai Chen's trouser leg with her trembling little hand. She made up her mind and took a step forward. But this step happened to trigger the mechanism. Suddenly, a white robe fell from the top of his head with a thick rope tied on it. There was an ugly and ferocious ghost face painted on the white robe. If you didn't look closely, it looked like an extremely scary hanged ghost. The impact of this attack was not even weaker than the impact of Chu Qingyu's sword that flattened a dynasty. At this moment, Chu Qingyu, who had been holding back her fear for a long time, could no longer hold back. "It's so scary. How can I go on in this place? Woohoo!" Her voice was obviously trembling and crying, and her petite body suddenly threw herself into Nai Chen's arms. Her big watery eyes secreted crystal tears because of fear. In her pitiful appearance, where was the majesty of the emperor? Shock, the love letter was sent to the empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 375. The crystal tears even wetted Nai Chen's trouser legs. It took a long time for Chu Qingyu to suddenly react. "No, I just had salt water in my eyes. I definitely didn't cry out of fear." Realizing that she had just acted somewhat embarrassingly, she quickly tried to explain. But before he even finished speaking, as if he noticed Chu Qingyu's trepidation, the surrounding agencies were activated at the same moment. There are ghosts that suddenly appear, and there are strong winds that blow by violently. In the darkness in the distance, something like a human head rolled over. These are. The scene after scene had a strong impact on Chu Qingyu's young mind. This time, she finally couldn't bear it anymore. Not only did she fall into Nai Chen's arms, but the tears flowing down her face were even more touching. "That's too much. This kind of place is not suitable for children at all." In an instant, the fear and grievance that had been accumulated in his heart since he became smaller burst out at the same time. His petite body was buried in Nai Chen's arms, and he had already completely forgotten about the majesty of the emperor. At this moment, she just wanted to vent all the grievances in her heart. "It's so scary, woo." The empress, who used to be cold and arrogant, was now in Nai Chen's arms, crying like a human being. His petite body trembled slightly, his shoulders shrugged, and the pitiful feeling was enough to make anyone feel as if their heart melted. Just when Chu Qingyu was crying a little selflessly, and tears of fear kept falling, she suddenly felt Nai Chen slowly leaning down. "Stop crying, honey, don't you still have me?" Nai Chen's voice came from his ears. This sentence instantly made Chu Qingyu's eyes freeze. Nai Chen could say, "Sorry, this is just a prank on my part," or he could say, "Don't worry, the ghosts are all sent by Yu Jian anyway, and they can't hurt anyone." But this sentence alone has a lethality that is completely different from any explanation. Upon hearing this answer, Chu Qingyu seemed to feel a warm current rushing through her heart instantly, as if her whole soul was enveloped by warm sunshine. At the same time, Nai Chen also slowly approached. He wrapped his arms around her and gently hugged her petite body. That body seemed to be the safest protective umbrella, being held in Nai Chen's arms. At this moment, Chu Qingyu seemed to feel that no matter what danger it was absolutely impossible to hurt herself. There is only the most trusting and reassuring feeling from deep in the heart. As if aware of Chu Qingyu's little thoughts, Nai Chen took out the snow lotus and inserted it into her soft hair. As a burst of light enveloped her, Chu Qingyu, wearing a snow lotus on her head, quickly returned to her original body. The strength at the peak of Huading realm was also restored. However, there was still a hint of grievance on the cold cheek, and the cheeks were slightly bulging, as if there was some resentment. Not only that, but the tears she shed just now because of fear still lingered. The corners of Chu Qingyu's eyes were still slightly red from crying, and there was even a glistening teardrop still spinning in her autumn eyes. If the shrunken empress is as delicate and pitiable as a doll, Chu Qingyu at this moment is as pitiable as a fairy who has landed in the mortal world and accidentally did something wrong. In an instant, she no longer has that otherworldly and inaccessible beauty. Feel. The bits of tears and grievances in that cold and arrogant person even made Nai Chen unable to help but feel moved in his heart. After all, besides myself, who else could do such a thing as bullying the crying empress? That's too much. You actually made me smaller on purpose, just to see me embarrassed. Just returned to his original form, it seems that he is still somewhat affected by his childhood personality. Wiping away the tears on her cheeks, Chu Qingyu stared at Nai Chen pitifully. Ahem, there's no other way. After all, other than this, is there any other way to take off your guard, wife? Nai Chen smiled slightly and came forward. What are you going to do? This emperor has not forgiven you yet. Chu Qingyu made a dodge move coquettishly. But it was obvious that this half-step back didn't look serious. The dark haunted house has no end in sight, and it's clear that Sister Ming may be secretly hiding in some corner watching this scene. But staring at Nai Chen, who was gradually approaching, Chu Qingyu's eyes became a little blurred. So is this why those young lovers go to haunted houses in the middle of the night and tell ghost stories on dates? Humph, it's really not a smart method at all. With a slight snort, Chu Qingyu couldn't help but feel a little shy, recalling all the reassuring actions Nai Chen made when entering the haunted house. In the past, she always felt that all the disciples who fell in love were stupid. But now I discovered that once you fall in love, no matter how smart both parties are, in the end, they all seem to become silly. A subtle and beautiful smile appeared on the cold face. This time, Chu Qingyu did not push Nai Chen away. In the darkness, slender arms surround her, and her cherry lips approach. Accompanied by slightly hot breathing, the kiss lasted for a very long time. The fragrant tongue is moist and soft, like a Chin hot spring. After a long time, Chu Qingyu slowly opened her eyes. After they separated, she couldn't help laughing. Honey, what are you laughing at? Nai Chen couldn't help but ask curiously. I'm laughing because, I always feel like you can always find weird ways to bully me. Oh. Hearing this, Nai Chen couldn't help but ask again. Then why are your cheeks a little red, my wife. This. Chu Qingyu suddenly paused for a moment, hesitated for a while, and was obviously a little embarrassed. That's because. Humph, I have to admit that although the process is a little bit excessive, it's still pretty good. Seemingly unwilling to admit it, Chu Qingyu quickly turned her head away proudly. Ahem, there's nothing I can do. Who said that other methods can't scare you, my wife, who is a great emperor, who is smart, beautiful, resourceful, and clever. So, the surprise I prepared is a little bit bigger. Nai Chen smiled slightly. You. Slippery tongue. After being praised like this, Chu Qingyu was actually a little embarrassed to blame Nai Chen for a while. After all, I have to admit that this honeymoon trip to the underworld is still quite good. So much so that he was about to return to Lanchuan continent, but he still felt a little reluctant. Humph. Turning around proudly, that beautiful face clearly had a barely perceptible sweet smile. Obviously, this trip to the haunted house still had a very good effect. At this moment, the system voice suddenly sounded. Ding, congratulations to the host for using the haunted house to perfectly complete the date, and now the system extra reward is released, Wuhan Dual Cultivation Method /. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 376. Hearing the sound of the system, Nai Chen couldn't help but burst into 2 words of vulgar words in his heart. It was about to leave the underworld and return to the Lanchuan continent. I didn't expect that the date in this haunted house would actually get such a reward. After taking a closer look at the dual cultivation technique, I found that its level has reached the heaven level. Moreover, the level of the skills ranges from the lower level of the heavenly level to the upper level of the heavenly level. If the 2 people who are dual cultivators have low cultivation qualifications and cannot exert the strength of the technique, let alone a low-level heaven-level person, it will even be difficult for them to use it. But if both parties have excellent cultivation aptitudes, they can maximize the power of the technique. Not only can you exchange spiritual power, but also enhance your cultivation. It can even wash the soul, purify the blood, and even greatly improve the qualifications and potential. Therefore, the great value of this technique, if it is really known to others, may be enough to cause a sensation in Lanchuan continent. But even if other monks get it, with the current cultivation level of many monks in Lanchuan continent that is not as strong as before, it will be extremely difficult to extract a pair of powerful Taoist companions of the great emperor. Therefore, this extremely precious dual cultivation technique, now, obviously can only exert its greatest effect if it is in the hands of himself and the Empress. Good brother. It's a pity that the system has no entity, otherwise Nai Chen would want to give him a pat on the shoulder in excitement. After all, this technique and the system do it really beautifully. After quietly putting away his skills and calming down, Nai Chen looked at Chu Qingyu. But honey, besides me, Princess Yuqian also has certain responsibilities for scaring you in the haunted house. So, do you want to do something? Do something? Chu Qingyu obviously showed a trace of doubt. That's right, treat others in their own way. Nai Chen answered mysteriously, and slowly took out the doll set that was awarded by the system when he gained the respect of millions of Yin soldiers. After carefully observing the system introduction, this doll suit has a strong ability to hide aura. Originally, Nai Chen was thinking of using it to scare Chu Qingyu. But since it is no longer needed, it can be used on Yu Jian instead. The panda-like doll set is very large and can accommodate 2 people. But when Chu Qingyu followed Nai Chen into the panda suit with hesitation, she was soon surprised to find out. The auras of himself and Nai Chen seemed to be completely restrained by the suit. They were completely absorbed without revealing the slightest bit. Strange, how are this material and weird effects created? Chu Qingyu couldn't help but be a little surprised by the material that could completely conceal the breath, even stronger than the breath-containing technique. However, this weird suit, Maybe it can have a miraculous effect and scare Sister Ming. Humph, Sister Ming, you can't blame me for this. Chu Qingyu smiled playfully, and she and Nai Chen put on the heads of the panda suits. Soon, this cute-looking panda doll disappeared into the darkness. Due to the darkness, it was impossible to detect any breath. This cute panda doll was hidden in the darkness, as if it was a hidden monster waiting for an opportunity. Moreover, under Nai Chen's control, he headed towards the depths of the haunted house without making any sound. Strange, why did their auras suddenly disappear? At this moment, Yukin, who was hiding deep in the haunted house, couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. The entire haunted house is connected with her breath, so she can always feel everything that happens in the haunted house. Even the scene where Nai Chen and Chu Qingyu kissed shyly just now was caught in her eyes. But just when she was a little embarrassed to continue looking and turned her gaze away, Yukin suddenly realized that the two of them had disappeared. And not only could they not see it, the auras of Nai Chen and Chu Qingyu seemed to have disappeared out of thin air, completely undetectable. Strange, what exactly is this? Even Yu Qian is a little confused. Almost nothing in the underworld can escape her perception, especially since the two of them are human beings, their yang energy should be extremely conspicuous. How could it be possible that they suddenly completely disappeared from her eyes? Could it be that there was an accident? No, even if Qingyu becomes smaller, Nai Chen is still by her side. What's more, how could there be a ghost in the underworld that could silently attack the two of them under my nose? Thinking about it, Yu Qian couldn't help but feel a little panicked. She quickly looked at the only two ghosts left around her and ordered. You should set off immediately and search for traces of Nai Chen and Qingyu in the haunted house. Once you find it, come back and report it to me. As you command, Princess. The two ghosts were stunned for a moment, obviously not expecting this unexpected situation. But soon, she absolutely obeyed Yu Qian's order, left quickly, and looked outside the haunted house. The two ghosts left, and soon, only Yukin herself was left in the empty and dark environment. Strange, what exactly is? Lost in thought, Yu Qian suddenly realized something was wrong. The two people suddenly disappeared, and the ghosts around them disappeared. Wait, is it possible? Yu Qian suddenly turned around, but suddenly realized that a huge black shadow flashed past her behind her. Although he couldn't see it very clearly, the black shadow was extremely strong and huge, and its speed was extremely fast. It disappeared in an instant, and Yu Qian quickly looked around. Nothing could be seen on the blind left side, and there was no sign of anything on the right side, which was pitch black and endless. Suddenly, Yukin looked above her head without any warning. But just above the ceiling, she saw the huge black shadow. Obviously, he fell into a trap. When Yu Qian saw it, the huge black shadow clearly knew that she had been discovered, and it exploded at an astonishing speed. The huge palm seemed to be completely grasping Yukin in his hand. As the successor of the current Netherworld dynasty, Yukin controls millions of Yin soldiers and has grown up in the underworld full of ghosts from the moment she was born. But at this moment, she couldn't help but feel a trace of fear that she had never felt before. The emotion that she had never experienced before spread instantly, and even made Yukin's heart tremble. The eyes looking upward couldn't help but suddenly shrink. What exactly is this? There was a slight tremor in her voice, and Yu Qian staggered back. But this step was not considered safe. She took one step back and almost fell down. Even though she could barely maintain the balance of her body, the crown on her head was teetering due to instability and was about to fall off with Yu Qian's movements. At the same time, the black shadow suddenly arrived. Its speed is so fast that it is even comparable to the powerful emperor. What on earth is it? When did such a ghost exist in the underworld? But even in Yukin's heart, she couldn't help but fall into unprecedented panic. But she suddenly realized that the huge black shadow stretched out its palm. And this palm is not meant to attack me, but gently holding onto the crown that almost fell off. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 377. At this moment, Yu Qian's eyes showed a hint of surprise. Obviously, he failed to understand what the purpose of this huge black shadow was. The distance was very close, and Yu Qian finally saw the appearance of the huge black shadow. They are black and white, some are fat, swollen, and even a little cute and honest. This is an iron-eating beast. Looking at the cute doll in front of her, Yu Qian was a little stunned. She never thought that the huge black shadow that created such a terrifying atmosphere just now could actually be a doll of an iron-eating beast. And upon closer inspection, it was a bit cuter than what she had seen before. I was frightened by the cute iron-eating beast doll, didn't I feel embarrassed just now? At this moment, a crack opened in the panda doll, and two figures emerged from it. Yu Qian looked around and found that hidden in the doll suit were actually Nai Chen and Chu Qingyu. Sister Ming, my scary ability is pretty good. Walking up to Yu Qian, even Chu Qingyu couldn't help but smile slightly. I didn't expect that Nai Chen's doll suit would be so magical, and it successfully frightened him back. So it's you. After being stunned for a long while, Yu Qian breathed a sigh of relief and stroked her chest lightly. As the princess of the underworld, how could she be frightened by others? This time, it's a shame. You little girl, you are too vindictive. Seemingly laughing at herself, Yu Qian lightly tapped Chu Qingyu's forehead. But at this moment, she discovered it. Unlike before, when she could only lean down and light Chu Qingyu's small forehead, now, Chu Qingyu was half a head taller than herself. If you want to touch her, you even have to raise your arm. The delicate and beautiful face has obviously grown longer, but the beautiful face also inadvertently reveals a bit of coldness. It can be seen that Xiao Qingyu has changed a lot over the years. But through Nai Chen, Yu Qian could clearly sense it. Even though her height and temperament have changed a lot, Qingyu's purest nature has never changed. Of course, if it weren't for Nai Chen, his identity would have changed dramatically over such a long period of time. Perhaps, it is difficult for him to return to the same feeling as before with Qingyu. A hint of warmth emerged in her heart, and Yu Qian couldn't help but look at Nai Chen. There was a smile of approval in his eyes. How do you feel? This time I came to the underworld and the haunted house just now, it should be pretty good. There was a hint of tenderness in Yu Qian's smile. This time, she looked at the two of them at the same time. Ahem, it's not bad. Chu Qingyu looked a little shy. Although the purpose of coming to the underworld was to solve the chaos in the Imperial Mausoleum, I didn't expect that a trip to the Holy Sea Beach and a visit to a haunted house were just like going out for a honeymoon. The only problem is... Gently covering the white snow lotus on her head, Chu Qingyu stared at Nai Chen faintly. Damn it, you actually dare to bully me so many times. When you go back, I will definitely not give you any good juice. Roar? Wife, are you sure? Now, I still have a handle on you, my wife. However, Nai Chen smiled subtly. Handle? Because the snowdrops will shrink when they are picked off, Nai Chen often plotted against him after he came to the underworld. For a moment, Chu Qingyu couldn't help but show a trace of panic. But after thinking about it carefully, I realized that now I have sufficient awareness of defense and my vigilance has been increased countless times. It is absolutely impossible for Nai Chen to snatch the snow lotus away again. After thinking for a moment, Chu Qingyu finally gritted her teeth and hummed. Humph, I don't believe it. If you can't take away the snow lotus, what leverage can you have against me? As he spoke, he overlapped his hands to firmly protect the snow lotus above his head. It was as if as long as the snow lotus was not taken away, there was absolutely no chance that Nai Chen would catch him and bully him. It's a pity that Nai Chen had already expected this when he saw Chu Qingyu's cute look of slightly proudly protecting the snow lotus. It is indeed difficult to snatch the snow lotus away now, but there are still other tricks the Empress has. Nai Chen suddenly came to Yu Jian's side and said in a deep voice, "Princess, didn't we agree to exchange the dark history of the Empress before? How about exchanging it now? Of course, I've been waiting for a long time." After hearing Nai Chen's words, Yu Jian instantly showed a hint of excitement. After all, she had been looking forward to this for a long time. "Let's go one at a time, I'll say it first, I'll say it first." Yukin whispered excitedly. "You don't know, even if Qingyu has grown up to be so aloof, she was still wetting the bed when she was 7 years old. The cutest thing was that one time, she dyed the sheets into a heart shape. I even kept the image and burned it into a photo ball." As she spoke, she took out her treasured photo ball, and the image that came out of it was exactly like the moist and heart-shaped bed sheet. Next to her, little Chu Qingyu was lying in deep sleep, her face still full of ignorance and innocence. Nai Chen's eyes were a little bright. "This picture is wonderful. It is a piece of black history about the Empress. Princess, please be sure to send it to me later. And when it comes to the Empress's sleeping habits, I happen to have them too. I'll tell you something in secret. The Empress has developed a habit of sleeping naked, and sometimes she doesn't even want to cover herself with a blanket. Coincidentally, I have some recorded footage here." After a while, Yu Jian covered her eyes with her fingers, and exclaimed shyly, "Wow, I didn't expect Qingyu's figure to be even more explosive than it looks." Yu Jian was overjoyed and immediately continued. "I still remember one embarrassing story about Qingyu. When she was a child, Qingyu accidentally saw a pornographic picture bought by a neighboring couple. After the little guy saw it, his face immediately turned red, which was even hotter than the steam from hot water. Oh! I didn't expect the Empress to be so pure when she was young. However, the Empress now is a little different." Nai Chen smiled subtly and lowered his voice. "The princess may not know that although the Empress now looks cold on the surface, she has no interest in anything. But in fact, it is much more difficult to satisfy her than it seems on the surface. For example, that night, the Empress held the quilt and endured for 2 hours, and actually took the initiative to say, 'Wow, Qingyu is so wild.' Haha, so the princess thinks so too. That's right, I didn't expect that facing such a thing, Qingyu's pure appearance would be so wild. If so, I still have a secret here. I remember. You too." Looking at the two people who were talking happily and even revealed all their little secrets to each other, Chu Qingyu on the side was completely panicked. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 378. Chu Qingyu never thought that the two of them knew so much. More importantly, they happened to have evidence. She seemed to be a perfect image in the eyes of the disciples of Tianyunhal and even countless cultivators in the world. But just the tip of the iceberg that was exchanged just now has almost dug out all her shameful past. If they continue to exchange secrets. Stop talking. Chu Qingyu hurriedly stopped them. But Nai Chen and Yu Jian were silent for a moment, then moved to the side. Ahem, continue. Go on. I still remember now, Qingyu. Damn Nai Chen. I bite you. Seeing that her underwear was about to be stripped by the two, Chu Qingyu was so ashamed that she didn't dare to wait any longer. She rushed forward and blocked the man and the ghost. She bit Nai Chen's shoulder in anger, and her cheeks were slightly red. Although the bite was not heavy, it also left a string of pretty teeth marks on Nai Chen's shoulder. And saliva with a faint fragrance. Ahem, you two are really in love. Looking at this scene, Yu Jian couldn't help but smile slightly. The atmosphere was silent for a while. Looking at each other, Nai Chen and Yu Jian seemed to have reached an agreement at the same time. Or, let's talk about it later. Well, let's discuss it in detail when you come to the underworld next time. Yu Jian nodded, but there was a hint of reluctance in her eyes. But, are you going to leave next? After saying this, Chu Qingyu couldn't help but be slightly stunned for a moment. She had been looking forward to meeting Sister Ming again for a long time, and she didn't expect that she could actually open up the space and come to the underworld. However, the time they met was a little short. Well, we have been away from Lanchuan continent for half a month. Now that the situation in the Imperial Mausoleum has calmed down, the hearts of the various sects in Lanchuan continent cannot continue to be on the same front. I must go back as soon as possible. Although the Tianyuan Palace is powerful, it has 12 holy envoys and dozens of powerful supreme elders. But obviously, Chu Qingyu's command is indispensable. Gently hugging Yuqian, the familiar cool breath emanating from the spirit body made Chu Qingyu's heart palpitate. Her identity is no longer the crying and cute little girl in the past, and she can no longer cry without scruples like before. However, at this moment, her beautiful eyes can't help but reveal a trace of sadness. Obviously, there is also some reluctance in her heart. Little idiot, I'm in the underworld anyway, you can come back to see me anytime, what's the problem? Go ahead and remember to come back more often. After all, I still want to exchange your dark history with Nai Chen. Yu Jian quickly felt Chu Qingyu's faint sadness, and suddenly patted her on the back. Chu Qingyu was slightly stunned, but soon reacted. Yes, now there are 7 color source stones, even the underworld can be reached. Don't worry, Sister Ming, I will definitely come to see you more, but exchanging secrets is absolutely not allowed. Chu Qingyu suddenly stood between Nai Chen and Yu Jian again, feeling a little ashamed and angry. Haha, I can't guarantee this, after all, your secret is too interesting. Yu Jian couldn't help but laugh. But turning around, she gently squeezed the darkness of the haunted house. Suddenly, deep sounds came from all around. With Yu Jian's control, the huge building, the extremely thick walls around it, opened to all sides at the same time. Soon, the entire completely closed building was completely opened, and the light from outside shone in. Thank you for saving the Netherworld dynasty and even the entire underworld. Let them see you off. As Yu Jian's voice fell, the millions of ghost soldiers of the Netherworld dynasty actually obeyed the order. With a grateful heart, they were wearing armor outside the haunted house, and their spirits were majestic. A million of the dynasty's ghost soldiers actually knelt on one knee in the direction of Nai Chen and Chu Qingyu at the same time, and bowed their heads deeply. Let's go, it's time to go back. Chu Qingyu turned and looked at Nai Chen, and there seemed to be ripples in her eyes. Well, let's go, my wife. Nai Chen also smiled and nodded, and took out the 7-color source stone. The value of the 7-color source stone that can open up the space between the two worlds is really precious and mysterious. Unfortunately, Emperor Qiuyan did not regain consciousness until the moment of his soul disappearing, and it is completely unknown where she got the 7-color source stone. Wait, why do I seem to remember that there is something important after returning? Before activating the 7-color source stone, Nai Chen suddenly remembered something. He vaguely remembered that before entering the Emperor's mausoleum, there seemed to be something that he had been looking forward to. What was it? Suddenly, Nai Chen's eyes lit up, and he suddenly remembered it. The Empress had clearly said that she would announce 2 things to all the sects in the world. One of them was to go to the Emperor's mausoleum, and the other would not be announced until she returned from the Emperor's mausoleum. And this big thing that was equivalent to the Emperor's mausoleum, Chu Qingyu had never mentioned it yet. Could it be that the Empress was going to say? Nai Chen suddenly felt a little expectant and excited. The colorful source stone in his hand flickered with light, and with the infusion of spiritual energy, the colorful source stone was activated again. The space that was originally extremely restricted and as solid as a rock was directly torn into a crack under the reflection of the colorful light. And this chaotic crack is the way to Lanchuan continent. Goodbye, Sister Ming, I will definitely come to see you again in a while. At this moment, even Chu Qingyu's cold cheeks were somewhat melted. Yeah. As if sensing the joy in her heart, even Yukin's crown flickered with a faint blue light. Chu Qingyu, who got the response, came to Nai-Chen's side. She stretched out her little finger, and the petite and cute little finger actually gently hooked Nai-Chen's hand. Nai-Chen couldn't help but smile. The Empress was too shy, and she was never embarrassed to hold hands. Every time she took the initiative, she only dared to stretch out her little finger. But he had already gotten used to this. Let's go, my wife. Holding Chu Qingyu's little finger, the two looked at each other and stepped into the space crack opened by the seven-colored source stone at the same time. Soon, the light of the crack engulfed the figures of the two. Princess, there may be an unexpected situation. Just then, a ghost soldier suddenly rushed over from a distance. Lowering his voice, he whispered seriously. The 8 goddesses of the 9 netherworld palace seem to be angry about what happened in the underworld and are ready to punish them. 8 goddesses. This time, even Yukin's eyes changed slightly. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 379. Oh no, if this continues, they will soon rush out. Looking at the barrier of the Emperor's mausoleum that was constantly being hit, the countless monks watching were all shocked and terrified. Because the things that were breaking through the barrier were not only those extremely strange white skeletons, but also the corpse of the Emperor who once dominated the continent. At this moment, the monks surrounded outside the barrier of the Emperor's mausoleum were not only those who followed Chu Qingyu into the Emperor's mausoleum. During this period of time, the terrible situation that happened in the Emperor's mausoleum was almost spread throughout the Lanchuan continent. Even those sects that had been self-sufficient and had no intention of participating in the affairs of the Emperor's mausoleum gathered here. In addition to Emperor Jinming and Emperor Pangyuan, there were 3 more emperors who originally planned to defend their power. The monks from all sides, the powerful ones who once put themselves on a high pedestal, now all stared at the barrier guarding the Emperor's mausoleum with fear. Because they all knew very well what the outcome would be if the barrier was broken. Not to mention the countless skeleton armies, the corpses of the emperors whose strength is still partially preserved even though their bodies are dead are enough to cause the entire Lanchuan continent to suffer. At that time, no cultivator from any sect will be able to remain immune, and all will be involved in this war. Looking at the scene in front of them, the cultivators from all directions are obviously more afraid. The riot in the Imperial Mausoleum has lasted for a full half-month. And today, the seal seems to have reached its final limit. No matter how mysterious and strong the seal guarding the Imperial Mausoleum is, it can no longer hold up. The seal guarding the outermost layer is composed of 12 mysterious characters. But now, 11 of the 12 golden characters have been broken in succession. Seeing that the last golden character is like a weak sailboat hit by the waves, it is about to be completely swallowed by the sea. The corpses of dozens of great emperors gathered in front of the seal, and every bombardment can make the golden characters tremble suddenly. Cracks have begun to appear on the golden text, and it is obvious that it has reached its limit. According to this trend, it may not even last for an hour before the golden text will be completely broken. Not good, those emperor corpses are actually preparing to attack at the same time. At this moment, Emperor Jinming, who had been staring at the last text, suddenly changed his eyes, and then his face turned pale. He clearly saw that the dozens of emperors who were originally wandering in the seal raised their palms at the same time as if they had agreed. The eyes of each emperor were covered with scarlet light, and strange patterns continued to condense in their palms. As the patterns continued to condense and construct, more and more majestic aura emanated from them. The power emitted by a great emperor alone is terrifying enough. If dozens of emperors attack at the same time, it is hard to imagine what kind of terrifying power will burst out. If this combined force strikes down, the seal of the emperor's mausoleum will definitely break directly. We must stop them. But how can we stop them? For a moment, countless cultivators were stunned at the same time, but they could not think of how to stop the situation from evolving. Not to mention that there was the seal of the emperor's mausoleum in the middle. Even if they could take action, facing so many great emperors, their strength was not at the same level. The blood in the hands of dozens of great emperors actually gathered in one direction at the same time. And in this rich blood, a mysterious formation was constructed. The words on this formation were extremely ancient and strange, and the breath it exuded was ferocious and fierce, just like a beast from ancient times. Roar. Accompanied by a roar, everyone's heart was as cold as falling into an ice cave at this moment. Countless people trembled, even those powerful cultivators who were invincible were pale, and their legs trembled uncontrollably. At this moment, the formation that was constantly condensing finally completed the last step. Strong blood energy surged into the sky, and in the center of the formation, a huge and ferocious blood-colored beast suddenly appeared. Accompanied by a terrifying roar, the blood-colored beast actually bit and came, and each sharp claw on its huge claws turned out to be a blood-red human head. When the giant claw slapped down, even though the last word of the imperial tomb seal had been blessed with an extremely mysterious blessing, it could no longer resist. Boom! For half a month, it had endured countless attacks and ravages and shattered. The 12 golden words were all destroyed and could no longer protect this place. Although there was still a barrier blocking the imperial tomb and the Nanchuan continent, this barrier was basically useless. The corpse of a great emperor with a stiff look filled with blood walked stiffly towards the outside. Just by stretching out his palm and gently swiping it, the blood-stained hand broke the barrier and tore a crack. The cracks on the barrier continued to spread in all directions like a spider web. Looking at this scene, all the cultivators seemed to fall into despair at the same time. It's over, it's completely over, the seal has been broken. From here on, no one will be able to stop them. The Lanchuan continent will be completely plunged into disaster, and it is very likely that no one will be spared. What should I do? Where can I run to? Where to go? Once these emperors lose their voices and break the seal, no place will be spared. Roar. As if they felt the breath of despair, the emperors looked at the many monks outside the barrier with stiff eyes at the same time. The roar seemed to reveal deep greed, as if they wanted to regard everyone as their food. Bloodthirsty and bloody. The fear spread, and at this moment, no one thought they could escape. Because this is no longer a matter of one or two people, it won't be long before the entire Lanchuan continent will be swept by the disaster. Where are the empress? Perhaps, they have already been buried in the imperial tomb. The boundless despair and fear seemed to swallow everyone up. As the barriers were broken one after another, the corpse of the emperor with a hideous smile had torn open a crack, and half of his body stepped on the land of Lanchuan continent. Everything is over. Maybe no one can stop this disaster. I never thought that after practicing hard for hundreds of years, I would die in a place like this. I can't even protect my relatives far away in my hometown. However, just when almost everyone fell into despair, they suddenly noticed in astonishment the corpse of the emperor who was about to enter Lanchuan continent. The movement suddenly stopped, and even the blood-red light in his eyes disappeared in an instant. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 380. Bang, bang, bang. Not only the emperor who had just crossed the barrier, but also all the emperor's bodies in the imperial mausoleum, as well as those furious skeletons that had completely lost their minds, all fell to the ground in the stunned eyes of all the monks. What on earth happened? Seeing the disaster coming, many monks obviously could not react to this sudden situation. They only saw clearly that the hideous and bloody emperor's body, who had just planned to rush out of the imperial mausoleum and slaughter people, suddenly fell down, and there was no sound at all. And the other emperors were obviously the same. The air became dead silent, and many monks looked at each other in astonishment, but they could not figure out the situation in front of them. Finally, in the atmosphere of fear and terror, a monk bravely stepped forward tremblingly. He actually came directly to the emperor's body that fell to the ground. The emperor's body had been purified long ago, and although he was dead, he was not decayed. The terrified monk squatted down tremblingly, but when he bravely looked at the emperor's corpse, he instantly understood. The blood red in the emperor's eyes had completely dissipated, and his corpse became stiff. All the spiritual power was retracted into his body again, without any fluctuations. At the same time, accompanied by the last shattering sound of the imperial mausoleum barrier that could no longer hold on. The barrier blocking the front was completely shattered all over the ground. Looking forward, the situation inside the imperial mausoleum has completely changed. The blood color that originally controlled all changes in the imperial mausoleum completely dissipated in the air, and there was no trace of the strange breath left. Losing control, the red light in the eyes of the emperor's corpses that broke out of the ground had completely dissipated, and their bodies fell one after another. Not only that, the countless army of bones seemed to have come to an end. Bones and bodies broke apart, and fell to the ground dejectedly. Some turned into a pile of bones, and some turned directly into ashes. The entire imperial mausoleum instantly became dead silent. But what can be confirmed is that whether it is the emperor's body, the skeleton, or the various strange scenes that originally occurred in it, all disappeared at this time. The riot in the imperial mausoleum has been completely quelled. What on earth happened? Emperor Jinming turned around in astonishment, but soon found that all the cultivators present were as shocked as him and even speechless. Although everyone was praying for a miracle in their hearts just now, this scene happened too suddenly. So that even if the scene in front of them was clear, they still couldn't believe it at all. After all, the emperor's bodies that were about to set foot on Lanchuan continent and cause a great catastrophe in the whole world suddenly lost control and fell to the ground. This kind of thing is as dreamy as if it happened in a dream. Although it is beautiful, it makes them a little unbelievable. Wait, could it be that the empress succeeded and solved the strange situation in the imperial mausoleum? Maybe, it's really possible. I don't know which cultivator couldn't help but guess, and then it instantly caused a boiling and uproar. After all, the current situation seems to be explained clearly in this way. But if it was really Chu Qingyu's doing? Humph, it can't be Chu Qingyu. At this moment, Emperor Baiming suddenly stood up. No matter what, he couldn't let so many cultivators in the world crown Chu Qingyu as a hero and feel grateful. Ending the changes in the imperial mausoleum, the great achievement of this matter is tantamount to protecting the entire Lanchuan continent. If Chu Qingyu really took it all, I'm afraid that Tianyun Hall would be more respected. At the same time, the majesty of these emperors would definitely be seriously affected. So the great Emperor Baiming stood up without hesitation, looked at the cultivators who had just spoken and snorted coldly, with a bit of sarcasm in his tone. No wonder your cultivation is low. You actually spoke to that woman who fled in the face of battle. I think you really deserve your lack of cultivation foundation. Fleeing in the face of battle? What did you say? The Empress went deep into the imperial mausoleum to solve the chaos in the imperial mausoleum for the world. But you didn't show up at all when the Empress called on all the sects in the world to deal with the imperial mausoleum in order to save yourself. How dare you say such a thing? Elder Wang of Tianyun Hall was so angry that his beard trembled. Now that the life and death of the Empress is unknown, it is unexpected that the great Emperor Beiming, who did not show up at the beginning, is now sitting back and enjoying the fruits of others' labor and even insulting the Empress, is so shameless. Roar! Solve the chaos! Ha ha ha, you dog really speaks in favor of your master. However, the great Emperor Beiming sneered arrogantly, then glanced at the cultivators around him, and looked at the disciples of Tianyun Hall fiercely, sneering. You still say that the Empress has made contributions? I think you are talking nonsense. The Empress Qingyu entered the imperial mausoleum early and did not gather with the cultivators of the world. What evidence do you have to say that she wanted to stop what happened in the imperial mausoleum? If you ask me, there is no evidence. The Empress Qingyu brought Saint Nai Chen and others into the imperial mausoleum just to escape from the battle and not want to fight. You actually want to force her to be a hero who stopped the imperial mausoleum? I think Chu Qingyu is just a clown who pretends to be a queen, but is actually weak and afraid of being seen by others. She can only escape from the battle. The one who really saved the people and organized the situation in the imperial mausoleum was our Beiming sect and the emperor who guarded here at the critical moment. Don't you think so? As he spoke, the great Emperor Beiming looked around indifferently, with a bit of cold threat in his eyes. In addition to wanting to attribute the credit to himself, more importantly, he knew very well that Empress Qingyu and others had disappeared in the imperial mausoleum for half a month. The imperial mausoleum was extremely dangerous, and the situation was unpredictable. After such a long time, there was still no news. There was a great chance that Chu Qingyu had died in it. Even if the riot in the imperial mausoleum suddenly stopped, it was likely related to her. I'm afraid she couldn't get out. That's why the great Emperor Beiming was so unscrupulous, as if he didn't even take Tianyun Hall and Chu Qingyu into consideration. You fart. Not only Elder Wang, but also the disciples of Tianyun Hall and the cultivators from all sides around knew the intentions of the great emperor at the same time. But in the face of the deterrent power of the great emperor, most people could only be angry but not speak. Dare to speak to me like this, you should know the consequences of offending the great emperor, right? However, Emperor Beiming not only showed no sign of restraint, but even looked at Elder Wang coldly. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 381. Emperor Beiming's intention is obvious. Hearing these indifferent words full of threats, not only Tianyun Palace, but also other monks could not help but feel a sense of disgust. After all, when the incident occurred in the imperial mausoleum, Emperor Beiming did not show up at all in order to preserve his strength. But now that the situation has been resolved, he suddenly jumped out and wanted to take all the credit. This kind of greedy behavior for getting something for nothing made even the many demon sects who came this time who had committed crimes feel a sense of disgust. The life and death of Empress Qingyu who saved Lanchuan continent is now unknown. Not only did Emperor Beiming not want to search for it at all, but he also wanted to seize this opportunity to take the credit. This kind of behavior is really shameful. But at this moment, Emperor Beiming was sure that Tianyun Palace would not have the support of the Empress and the Flower Saint. No powerful emperor could compete with him, and he actually began to press forward step by step. I just wanted to protect the Empress who had temporarily escaped, but she actually dared to insult me, frame her, and take all the credit. As expected, the monks in Tianyun Palace were all vicious and greedy people who were taught by Chu Qingyu. In this case, you should pay the price for your actions. A burst of cold laughter sounded, and Emperor Beiming actually stared at everyone in Tianyun Hall. Not only that, but the forces of the Beiming sect behind him also moved accordingly. They actually opened an encirclement circle and began to slowly surround the disciples of Tianyun Palace. The murderous intent was overwhelming, and he actually seemed to want to take action. You are ambitious, no wonder someone like you would bring almost all the people of Beiming sect at this time. Unexpectedly, you had already made up your mind to take advantage of this opportunity to plot against Tianyun Palace. Elder Wang was so angry that even though he originally did not dare to confront Emperor Baiming, he pointed at his nose and cursed angrily regardless of the consequences. The Empress entered the imperial mausoleum for the sake of the thousands of creatures in Lanchuan continent and the Saint Nai Chen. Now that the chaos has finally been solved, you, a selfish villain who is hiding in your lair and enjoying the gains, don't know how to be grateful, and you still want to take advantage of the opportunity to take action against Prince Tianyun. People like you are simply damnable. Haha, you scold me like this, but I feel wiser. So what, everyone will only look at the winning side. As long as Tianyun Palace is annexed, not only will the credit for the imperial mausoleum be ours, but even the admiration and praise will be mine. Just wait until you go to hell to complain about it to the poor Empress Qingyu who is the scapegoat. However, Emperor Baiming obviously had no sense of shame. Not only was he laughing arrogantly, but there was even a cold and strong murderous aura emerging from his body. At this moment, Shen Kongshuang, who had been dormant for a long time, showed anger in his eyes and suddenly took action. As the strongest assassin beside Chu Qingyu and one of the 12 holy envoys, Shen Kongshuang played a significant role in the establishment of Tianyun Palace. There are even countless powerful saint emperors assassinated by him. In countless assassinations, Shen Kongshuang's skills have been honed to perfection. While lurking, the aura on the body can disappear without a trace. When the attack is launched, it is as fast as lightning, precise and deadly, and does not give the opponent any chance to react. The Dark Night blade cut through the space so fast that it almost left only an after-image. Seeing it, this knife was about to strike the big, fat, and ugly face of Emperor Baiming. But at this moment, Emperor Baiming suddenly took action. Although his speed was far less than that of Shen Kongshuang, just a moment after he raised his palm, an invisible barrier appeared in front of him. It was obvious that even the outline of the barrier could not be seen clearly, but Shen Kongshuang's knife was blocked in mid-air and could not advance even half a minute no matter what. It was as if what held her blade was an extremely powerful hand. It can't be stabbed in, but it's also impossible to pull out. Even though Shen Kongshuang poured all his spiritual power into the night blade shone with a dark and cold light, a faint chill. But no matter how severe the feeling of chilling was, it couldn't tear a crack in the space barrier. The entire night blade, and even Shen Kongshuang's arm, were imprisoned in the air. Even Shen Kongshuang couldn't help but show a hint of shock. Although she had countless assassination targets, she had never assassinated a powerful emperor. The power of this blow has poured into Shen Kongshuang's determination to kill. But obviously, she didn't expect that there was a huge difference in strength between herself and the powerful emperor. When Emperor Baiming exuded the cold air of frost and snow, for a moment, she even felt that she was so weak and insignificant. The strong sense of oppression came, leaving Shen Kongshuang with no room to dodge. Bang! Emperor Baiming's palm tore through the space and directly grabbed her neck tightly. The power of those hands was terrifying. Shen Kongshuang almost fainted from the suffocating feeling when his throat was strangled. Humph, are you worthy of assassinating this emperor? Who gave you the confidence? Emperor Baiming smiled mockingly, exuding a cold sense of oppression from the emperor. I don't know if what he said was addressed to the monks from all sides, or to the people of Baiming sect. Empress Qingyu and Tianyun Palace have done many evil things and even tried to annex the power of all the great emperors in the world. Now the infamous Empress Qingyu actually escaped from the battlefield, leaving behind the chaos in the imperial mausoleum, trying to make the people of the world suffer the disaster. Such a treacherous woman is really a shame to the imperial realm. Now, I, who have calmed the catastrophe of the imperial mausoleum, will seek justice for the people of the world. Destroy the Tianyun Palace and destroy all the remaining forces of Empress Qingyu, so that she will never be able to turn over. As he said this, Emperor Baiming suddenly exerted force in his hand. The tyrannical force from his palm strangled Shen Shuang's neck. Even if she resisted with all her strength, she was suffocated and almost lost consciousness, and she was completely unable to break free. Kill. Eradicate the remaining forces of Empress Qingyu, the Banshee. Almost all the people of Baiming sect, who had been prepared, shouted at the same time. Following the elders of the sect, they headed for Tianyun Hall. Since they did not want to bring more people to die, there were less than 1/10 of the cultivators in Tianyun Hall at this moment. Other sects that had an alliance with Tianyun Hall did not bring too many people. Compared with Baiming sect, which had already prepared for the murder, the number was far from being matched. Asshole, I didn't expect that the Baiming emperor was so ambitious and had no bottom line. The disciples of Tianyun Hall cursed angrily. But they soon realized that they were already trapped in the siege. The number and strength of both sides were not at the same level. After falling into such a trap, the backbone of Tianyun Hall might really be surrounded and killed here today. Elder Wang frowned, knowing how bad the situation was. Oh! Someone actually wanted to take advantage of the chaos and insulted me behind my back. It seems that you don't want to sit on the throne anymore. Just then, a cold laugh suddenly came from the direction of the emperor's mausoleum.